Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another installation of andstillboxing. We are still on the road right now down in relatively beautiful, not cold, Melbourne, Australia. So, today, there's been some breaking things, some been interesting things that have been going around in the boxing scene, especially in the Australian scene. Some of the guys that probably don't get as much love as they should, even though they're so big, have announced some fights and some very curious fights that are happening right now, or occurring, or in the works, should I say. Those are Imam Khataev versus David Morrell, and then later on this episode, we're going to be speaking about a bit of George Kambosos versus Richardson Hitchins as well, which I think is an interesting matchup in a few senses. And like every time I speak to you guys here at our and Still Boxing family, is that I don't want to have too many alliances. I don't want to be biased in how I speak, should I say. I want to give my honest opinions and what I think, and what I think you guys would want to hear, and that it's an honest opinion. Even though I do speak to these guys and they do present some, Jim Kambosos and a few other guys on this level on the inside, I like to give still nonetheless an honest opinion on what I think is going on within these matchups. So, this first matchup with David Morrell and Imam Khataev from Russia, by way of Russia, the Sydney Destroyer. This is a very interesting matchup in the sense that you have Jim Kambosos, who is essentially the manager of Khataev, and he's been, organising it and making sure he's going the right direction. I've had been a bit of correspondence with him and asking and go, what direction is going on? Is this real? What's going on? What information I do have right now is that Imam Khataev's team has the contract in place with David Morrell in principle, as it were. So they're not signed yet, but like, hey, listen, this is what we want, it's what we expect, and the idea of it's there. It's going to be in a big card in New York. All right. Now, this is a really interesting matchup because Imam Khataev is a little bit of a dark horse. All right, if I'm going to liken it to something, I'd like to liken it to George Kambosos versus Lopez. Okay, a good fighter, not known though, not known on that global stage. I can see this being David Morrell's coming off a big fight with Benevidez. I'm at this level, I'm this top level, and he is at a very high level. He's very respected. But someone coming from, like, almost like a dark horse, coming with Khataev, right, is coming in from Sydney, maybe not globally known, all right, and he's going to come in, and David Morrell may be overlooking him, and it could be, a banana skin, as it were, all right. These things can happen, and I can see this fight being like that, being like George Kambosos and Lopez, where Lopez overlooked George Kambosos, got done. This could be the exact same situation. This is a high-stake matchup. It is like this because that Khataev is 30 years old now. He's got Olympic pedigree. He's very good, but he's only stepped up to a 10-round fight, his last fight, versus Palacio. And Palacio, he was no bum. Man, that man came to fight. I was there live, and Still Boxing was there live to see it. And I tell you what, he was game. He was ready to go. He was hitting Khataev some nice counter shots, and he put in work. Yeah, he got knocked down, but he got up and he couldn't get finished. Palacio was there to fight. All right, he did take quite a bit of punishment, quite a bit of damage during the fight. Palacio, that is. And apparently afterwards he couldn't fly home directly because the swelling was too bad. And I come from a medical background myself, and they said, we don't like people to fly so immediately after them having so much damage. But I think Iman, his eye was a bit damaged as well. Yeah, I think he said in the interview that we did post-fight, said round, I don't know, was it 2 or round 5 or something, that he couldn't see out of it. It was done. All right. Now, Morrell is a step up from Palacio, okay? And that's going to prove to be a very interesting matchup stylistically. Now, I'm led to believe that Khataev, and he's Chechen, if I'm not mistaken, or Russian, essentially. But that style has matched up historically pretty well against the Cuban style. All right, he could come there and bully him, essentially. If you see this guy, he's built. The reason they call him Sydney Destroyer is for a reason. He's built like a tank. All right, the man takes care of his body, no drinking, no nothing, really keeping himself in tip-top condition to take on these top-level fighters, okay? And like I said, the Olympic record. I mean, let's look at their records right now. Imam Khataev, 10-0, 9 KOs. Now, it's early in his career, and he's just had his first 10-rounder, but he's knocked pretty much everyone out. And this last fight, he's shown that he can go 10 rounds. Now, he looked like it's his first time doing it. Okay, he looked a bit gassed a little bit there, around 5 or 6, but he had a second win and came through. Got his knockdown and stuff like that, but he did not get the knockout this time. But that's good because it's rounds that they need, and it's rounds that they go towards, building their repertoire out. Now, if you look on the other hand, you got David Morrell, 11-0, 11-1, 9 knockouts. Obviously, he has a lot of power as well. However, his last fight with David Benevidez was a bit of a blockbuster, right? It was a big show, 2 big names, a really up-and-coming, superstar, Morrell, versus the established guy, and David Benevidez was a fascinating matchup in the sense that it was probably better than the one originally, which I can't remember the top of my head, but with Morrell coming in and accepting this fight, it might have been a bit early in his career, but that experience that he's got at light heavy now and with the guys like Benevidez is irreplaceable. One thing which I found absolutely peculiar, and comment below if I'm wrong, is that Morrell's fight plan for the David Benevidez fight was absolutely fascinating to me in the sense that this bloke comes in, all right, and he pretty much stands in front of Benevidez. I don't know if this was to test, like, hey, Benevidez, you don't hit that hard at light heavyweight. I can take it. And by looks of things, he took the whole thing, and he got it. And Morrell knocked down Benevidez, but I think it was a bit more of a slip situation. He wasn't really hurt or anything. Not sure. I have to get some more background information. I have to ask them directly. However, he did get the knockdown, and he started putting the pedal to the metal round 10. I don't understand that game plan. I mean, I'd expect a bit more movement from him. Cubans and that style is historically known to be exceptionally good movers. Gain that rhythm. And it just didn't happen. And Benevidez essentially bullied him for those rounds, but bullied him in the sense that he outvolued him. It wasn't really hurting him. Benevidez's power seems to not carried up to 175, to light heavyweight. We'll have to see how that pans out, see if he can grow into it a little bit more, put on a bit of muscle, because he's got that awkward body shape where he's got those wide hips and that upper body isn't quite as thick as you expect it to be for someone at light heavyweight. So maybe that can translate up, but it doesn't seem to be doing the damage like he was. He wasn't like he bullied those smaller guys. Morrell seemed to have taken it. If Morrell fought like that against Khataev, it'd be a bad day for him. Okay. Khataev is built like a tank, yet hard to hit. I don't know if anyone knows that song. But what I'm saying is that Khataev can deliver some serious power. All right. We saw in his last fight with Palacio that he can go to the body. Body attack is something in his repertoire, and it took a little bit of gas out of Palacio's tires. Took a little water in the basement, as Teddy Atlas would say. All right, and then he didn't get the stoppage, but that showed his dynamic shot selection. He said after in the post-fight press conference that he wanted to essentially box more this time, show that skill that he has. Doesn't want to go on there and just obliterate them, which is quite capable of doing. But Morrell, if he fought like that, like he did against Benevidez, he would probably get stopped. I don't think it will be the case. Now, yes, Khataev is a bit flat-footed. All right, he doesn't have that really dynamic movement. But if the Cuban in Morrell doesn't do that and he fights like he does against Benevidez, it's going to be a very short night for him, if anything. However, I don't think he would implement that style and that game plan. I feel like he would use that footwork, use that long distance, all right, that long to medium range, keep out of the way, all right? And as we know, Khataev, if you have seen any of his fights, he's quite an aggressive fighter, not a bad counter fighter. He's got those options to the body. He's Olympian. Historically, his style, he's never lost to a Cuban, he said, all right, and that Cuban style, so that's always a plus. However, Morrell is different, all right? That experience that we've taken from Benevidez and that fight would be exceptional to what's about to happen. So it's been agreed in principle, and it will be a make or break situation. Now, styles make fights. I feel like this could be an interesting style because Morrell has been historically known to rely on some power. Not rely on the power, but he has the power and that gives him confidence to engage. And he might have the slightly quicker hands, all right? But I think I'd give the timing aspect to Khataev there because the guy's got pretty good boxing IQ. You look at him, just destroyer, big muscles, this, that, but he's got a fine boxing brain, I'm led to believe, and just what I've seen historically from his last 9 fights. Now, if Morrell does want to engage, it has action, all action written all over it. Okay, 2 guys that can hit, that have stopped a lot of their opponents. This could take the fight. This could be the fight of the night. If it's happened, then we'll run it back, shaving years of everyone's life if they do that. So that's when the styles make fights. And this is potentially a stylistic matchup that could entertain the boxing fans, and almost whoever loses in this fight, there won't be a loser. Their stocks will go up. What do they say? The rising tide raises all the ships. It'd be that type of situation that I think potentially here. Now, we spoke to Jim Kambosos, the manager of Khataev, and he was saying that he's 30 years old now, right? We need to make sure his career is continuing to progress. The man's capable, he's a completely capable fighter. However, what it is there's no more 8-rounders. There's no more, 6-rounders, obviously not, but 8-rounders. He's 10 now, 10 and above, right? He had the last 10 round against Placio. Now he's going to the 10 to 12s. Let's start projecting ourselves into the light heavyweight title contentions here. And there's some huge names at light heavyweight, some really fascinating things. However, buyer beware. Morrell is no bum. He's a live guy. Khataev is no bum. He's a live guy. For our Cuban fans out there, okay, I like Morrell. If he wants to engage, I don't think he has the power to go 1-for-1 with Khataev. It might be a short fight, but if he chooses to stay long, that's where it's going to be interesting. It depends what style these guys choose to implement that will make this fight fascinating. Khataev is age 30. He's 30 years old, so he can't afford a setback right now. Okay, if it's a great fight, sure. High action, big, whatever happens, a very entertaining fight for the fans, what I'm trying to say, sure. We can maybe afford a loss then, but what it is that you cannot afford to lose a fight at 30 years old, all right? He needs to be on a steady projection, but doing it right. So that's what I like from Matchroom and Jim Kambosos there, and matching up this fight to make sure it's a real 50-50. They seem to think there's more of a 60-40 or sorry, a 50-50 fight, and I probably have to believe that as well. So this is really a pressure fighter in Khataev versus someone that could either choose to be that back foot ranged fighter or choose to engage. And I don't think he'd choose to engage. I think it's going to be a chess match in that sense. I don't think you want to engage with this man because he has the power to cause upsets and sleep you with 1 or 2 punches. So beware and buyer beware. Now we've got to ask ourselves, what does this mean for Khataev if he does win this fight? Well, I think that what they're trying to aim for here in a very stacked light heavyweight division is that a Benevidez fight. A David Benevidez versus Khataev, if he gets the win, okay, and proves himself. Now, this would be spectacular in the sense that, call me controversial, but I think right now I would give Khataev the 60-40. I'd probably agree with that, which I've heard a few people talk about. I'd say it's 60-40 to Khataev, maybe 55-45, whatever it is. But stylistically, I think Khataev would cause Benevidez a lot of drama. The power is differential, is stark. I'm not sure if Benevidez's power has carried up to 175. I need to see the proof from that. I don't think he's going to bully Khataev. I think the one advantage that he has that I have seen from Khataev's last fight is that he's got a bigger gas tank and he might out-volume him. However, I see this fight not dissimilar to how I would see a Canelo Benevidez fight, where you'd have more of a precision hitter and someone with substantially more power to go against a volume guy. And that's what it is, essentially, if you boil it down to its essences. And I like the power puncher over the volume guy. A bit more precision, a bit more power. All right, you don't have to chase them around. You don't have to get gassed. Benevidez is a human being, but he's proved to be tough and defensively sound, and his defense has improved over the last 3 fights, I would say. However, that power has not seemed to carry it up, and he can't bully the guys like he would. And Khataev's a tough guy, not infallible. We've seen him being hurt in the last fight, but you've seen him very gritty, determined. He wants to be there. Like, his eye was shut, and he still won that fight against Blasio, showing a bit of boxing, a bit more dynamic shot selection than just go in there and obliterate. So, chess match versus power and precision for both. The Morrell fight or not. What would happen for Morrell next? Well, we'd have to see. He might take another sort of a local fight and then go up to someone else in the light heavyweight division. But there's a bright future for both of them, and that's what makes it so interesting. That's a 50-50 fight, and both guys can have a lot to gain from it. If I'm going to liken it to something, I would say that Morrell versus Khataev is very similar to a Beterbiev versus Bivol. All right. However, it has the added, the casino, the gamble, where Morrell could just choose to engage. Go, hey, let's bang, let's make this a classic. And shaving years off everyone's life that's fighting, but the fans love it. So that's the way I see that panning out. Predictions, I'm sure there's going to be some more videos that's coming out about it, but that's just kind of wanted to highlight the difference there and some initial thoughts that I might have on that. Let's make sure this fight gets signed beforehand. I think there's a lot of interest amongst the fans, especially in Australia, and especially, I'd have no doubt throughout New York, that this would be a banger all-action fight. Now, the second part, Australia's own George Kambosos versus Richardson Hitchins, his 140-pound test. Now, June 21, I believe, for the IBF super lightweight title, Australia's George Kambosos versus Richardson Hitchins. Now, this style matchup, they say styles make fights, and they do. This one is interesting in the sense that I see Richardson Hitchins as a Teemu Haney. All right. He's a decent boxer. He fights on the outside. He keeps it long, defensively sound. Not that much volume, but he looks for precision behind a very, very good jab. We've seen this before. These styles and that style has been the kryptonite to George Kambosos in the last previous fights. So they were a few years ago, and he's got a new trainer since then. I'm sure he's worked on some new things. However, George, with those 2 losses to Haney, didn't have a solution to get around that style, that American style, that Floyd Mayweather style, if you will, where you want to keep it long, snipe you out from the outside, use that nice footwork to stay out. Now, I don't think Richardson Hitchins is as good as Haney. I don't think Haney is amazing. So that's what makes this more interesting. And it's at 140 pounds. It's not at the weight division below. So that means I think that footwork of the smaller man in this sense is going to be a key factor. However, before I get into that, let's talk about some other very important things to highlight in this. As a lot of you would know, Australia's own Liam Paro fought Hitchins, okay, after that huge win that Paro got against Matthias. He then faced Richardson Hitchins and he was defeated. Now, Paro struggled to close the distance, all right, and disrupt Hitchins' rhythm. I think that's the key factor and the key thing that we have to take away from this. Now, he really dominated using that footwork, the jab, and the distance management. That's really what it was. All right. Couldn't close the distance. I kept it long. You're walking on some punches. I don't think Paro was hurt. I don't think Paro was in any danger, but he's just outpointed. He couldn't close the distance. All right, that jab is from Hitchins is underestimated. All right, something he concentrated on. Someone that's previously been on the channel, Farid Samad, who has actually been in the same gym and trained Hitchins before. He said he's got this thing in his head where sometimes he wants to fight on the inside and engage, but if he just fought on the outside, he'd be almost unbeatable. Well, he seemed to have unlocked that in this situation. He kept Pyro at bay because Pyro's got big power. All right, historically, the people that Pyro's fought, they have felt the power. They've known, and it's kept them honest. They can't come in, bully him, do whatever he needs to do. Subriel Matias wanted to do the same thing. Wanted to walk him down, and Pyro got the best of him, right? Used that footwork to spin him because Matias wanted to come in as a Terminator. Wanted to come in, big shots, started smoking. They started tiring him. They couldn't hurt him. Man, Pyro fought his game plan, implemented his game plan. Shot, turned him off the center line. Couldn't follow him. Counters again, all the way in, all the way out. And that's what you need to do. He never had an opportunity to start kicking off. And I saw Pyro in those late rounds. He was gassing. Oh, he was gassing. But that's what you need to be in a champion. He dug deep and he went hard. And sadly, he did lose this next fight against Hitchins because of that. Work the jab, keep it long. All right, which is, personally, I don't really like that style. I mean, sure, it's great boxing, but me, it's kind of boring. All right, it's like Floyd Mayweather. Honestly, yes, I appreciate him being a very fantastic boxer, fantastic counter boxer. I preferred Floyd Mayweather when he was younger and knocking people out using that sort of similar style. As he got older, he shifted over. Sure, makes complete sense. You want to protect the O, you want to, protect your body from shots. Yeah, that makes complete sense. But me, as a greedy fan, want to watch him just get hurt, watch people fight, wasn't ideal. It was a bit boring. So I'm not saying he's a bad boxer, but I'm just saying I don't really appreciate that style that much for the excitement factor of it. So, what are we going to look at here? Liam Pyro couldn't get it done, sadly, because couldn't close the distance. What does that mean for George Kambosos? George Kambosos has come up from the weight division below. He's gone up. This is his first title attempt at 140. The one thing which we've noticed between Pyro and George Kambosos is that George's footwork is a lot quicker. All right? Chin's similar. I think George has a good chin. I think Pyro has a good chin. I don't think Hitchins has big power. Keep you honest, not big power though. Where this differentiates is the delivery system from George Kambosos is a lot quicker. I wouldn't say he has better footwork. All right, I think it's fine. I'm sure he's working on quite a few things with his new coach. However, the quickness of it and that veteran and those things that he's picked up in training, 2 against Haney, 2 fights against Haney, Lomachenko, 10 rounds. All these things he's picked up a lot. And the footwork and that delivery system may cause Hitchins a little bit more drama, causing him to engage a lot more than he wants to, causing him to increase his volume, which I don't think he does, and he potentially will gas. Maybe what Farid Samad said was that when he increases his volume, and he's forced to increase his volume through quicker footwork and things like that, that potentially what it is that he'll start fighting on the inside, gets a bit tired, arms get a bit sore. I know it sounds funny, but at this high level and they're pushing the pace like they do, maybe it's something that happens. Where George Kambosos thrives is in that pressure cooker. All right, he wants to engage, he wants to counter. He doesn't throw straight punches. George has, I'm sure he's capable of it, but he doesn't like to really throw straight punches, like to throw them over the guard that they have here. All right, that his opponents have. This could be vulnerability for Hitchins, maybe, or keep his guard up and goes to the body a little bit more. But what it is that pressure cooker that George likes, and potentially with the quicker footwork, you can start volume him out. And Hitchins may want to start engaging on the inside, and that plays into George's game more and more and more. Perhaps that's something that they can do, but stylistically speaking, if George can't close the distance and deliver that power, all right, deliver those shots, should I say, deliver the shots, is that we could see exactly what happened with Pyro, that he can't go on the inside, gets a bit tired, trying. And you could also make the argument on the other side that Hitchins already has the playbook and the blueprint on how to beat George Kambosos through Haney's fights. No one can do what Lomachenko does, so let's throw that out the window. But perhaps he's like, hey, I'm just going to copy this and do this, work the jab, make it a boring fight. If he gets past the jab, throw the right hand, get out, get out, get out. If he gets too close, tie him up, push him back. Maybe. But George has to get his Richard Hitchinson's respect through delivering some power shots and actually having some sting behind it. Now, I don't think George Kambosos is under the illusion he's a huge one-punch knocker-outerer, but he said to me he has to settle into that 140 pounds. Personally said, listen, my first fight, my first boil down to 140, my first rehydration from that, let me settle into it. I mean, we saw it with Usyk, for example, once he went from cruiserweight all the way up to heavyweight. He was knocking people out straight away, but we'll have to see how that pans out. But straight away, I mean, first fight at 140, next fight, fighting for a world title. Let's hope they get it right the second time. But I think it's going to be the speed that gives George Kambosos his edge, not the power punching. All right, he can obviously sting you, any professional boxer can, but I think that's where it is settled, where we settle at. Now, some legacy notes here. George Kambosos, we can definitely say that he's never ducked. I don't think anyone can make that argument. All right, so I don't think he does get the appreciation and love that he needs for that he hasn't really taken fights that are questionable, especially once he had the belts. Sure, you do what you have to do once you're building up, but I don't think that's the case. All right, and he's always taken pretty hard fights, and this one coming back with Jordan and got replaced by Wiley, sure, not every fight can be a superstar blockbuster fight once you have a belt. I liked how that fight panned out. Give a young guy a platform, and that's what you should do, and put on a really good fight, and Jake Wiley showed his qualities. And the second thing, if George Kambosos wins against Richard Hitchinson's, man, that could be a fight with Paro. Fascinating. Or alternatively, that could be the nail in the coffin for all the haters out there and say George Kambosos ain't shit. It's not the case, right? He would have been a two-weight division champion. Four belts at that stage, 5 belts. Can't argue that. So on that legacy note, that's something that you have to take consideration. That's if he wins. Potentially, we could see something like we saw again with Paro, that he just can't get on the inside, or him against Haney. We'll definitely have to see, because this could be something like I was saying before, that they have the blueprint. It's like when Buster Douglas beat Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was unstoppable, big killing machine. But when he fought Buster Douglas, they realised that when he comes on the inside, deliver those hooks, those straight punches, tie him up, walk him back, and that blueprint was written by Buster Douglas, and Holyfield did that twice in his 2 fights, and we know how those panned out. So is it going to be repeat and revenge for that same style there, with Haney's style and / Hitchins' style versus Kambosos, or has Kambosos essentially made some corrections? Now, 2 pivotal moments in these men's careers, different stages. All right, we have Khataev, who's 30 years old and only had 10 fights, but it's do or die in his first taste at the world stage. This has the potential of stealing the fight of the night of whatever card it comes on. And I cannot wait to see that, because this is going to be a fascinating matchup. We have a potential Cuban, either slugger or boxer, whichever one he chooses, against the Sydney Destroyer, and someone that can prove and has proven to have some serious power, boxing IQ, but also grit. Secondly to that, George Kambosos, the catalyst of someone that has projected Australian boxing into the world stage again, into the public eye one more time, is having his 140-pound title challenge against Richard Hitchins, who already has a scalp of one Australian. Will we see a legend born, Australian sporting legend born? That's right, I've said it, Australian sporting legend born. Or will we see the American get another scalp of an Australian because we hadn't been able to close that distance? Now, I have no doubt that this is going to be not the only time we do a video on this, as it comes closer and we get closer and closer to it, and we start getting some more information, things that's coming along, and we start doing our hyper analysis into it. I cannot wait, and we might get a bit more, but right now this is the way I see it happening, and I just want to highlight that to our boxing public and our And Still Boxing fans. Now, if you do like this video, and I know we're on the road, it's not quite what we used to, but if you do like the video, please like and subscribe. I'm Guy McKinnon, this is And Still Boxing, and until next time.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, please subscribe.